Shalom. Oh, there's people in the waiting room. Admit all. Here we go. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom, Rabbi Elias.
Shalom, Ellen Rose. Shalom, Ellen Friedman.
Shalom, Rabbi. How are
Shalom.
you?
Rabbi George is here.
Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
Hi, Sue. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I just realized I forgot to turn off my air conditioner, my air filter. I'll be right back.
Oh, we can't hear it. It's fine. I have mine on all the time sometimes. Well, it's off now.
I think it might be okay since I don't have Zoom on the musician settings, but
Yeah,
just to be
can
safe,
even
I turned it off.
I can hear it. So.
Oh, good. Well, Erev Tov, Hatzoraim Tovim, everybody. I was thinking that we could do a shorter Maariv and then some Torah study afterwards. Or, we can even talk about the Devar Torah if you want in the middle, whatever works. So let me get this started. Okay. Is that visible to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome to Sim Shalom Online Synagogue. I'm Rabbi Elias Swang. In the audience, we have Rabbi George Bowden and all of the Sim Shalomers who have come to gather together on this beginning of the 26th of Tevet, I believe. So let's get it going, everybody. Hine matovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Let the good in me connect with the good in others until the whole world is transformed through the compelling power of love. It's time for some barhuing. Here we are, world. Let's let them hear us. Ellen Friedman, you want to barhu for me this evening?
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam vaed.
Blessed is the eternal presence, the holiness that keeps us united with our ancestors and our destiny to become forever and ever. And now it's time to recognize where we are on this planet as we turn and as Hashem creates dusk out of day. Praised are you, Adonai above, who rules the universe. By your way is the evening dusk, and by your wisdom is the morning dawn. The day is designed with your miracles. The seasons are set in your order, and the stars are arranged in your sky. You create day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light. Eternal divinity, your sovereignty shall embrace us forever. Praised are you, Adonai, for each evening's dusk. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim. Actually, Rabbi George, would you like to sing the Ahavat Olam for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadata Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shukbenu U'kumenu na'asiyek b'chukecha V'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha U'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu Ve'orek yamenu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla Nege yomam v'layla V'ahavatcha al tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
I think in every service, you have a moment where you really feel connected to your ancestors. And for me, that was right there with Rabbi George singing that in that way, with such gentleness and such kindness. I'm amazed by your ability to bring out the ancientness in that. Thank you, Rabbi George.
Thank you.
We continue now with the Shema, the whole point of us being here. Ellen Rose, I want you to have them hear you singing the Shema uptown.
Okay. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shekavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Amen. Thank you, Ellen. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בעם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשופתך ובקומך, וקשבתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Marvin Gruber, you up for some translating?
You can try.
Go for it.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day, you shall take to heart. Teach them diligently to your children and recite them at home and way, night and day. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your home and on your gates, upon your gates. Then you will remember and observe all my mitzvot and be holy before your God. I am Adonai your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, Adonai, am your God who is truth. Adonai Elohim Emet.
Amen. Thank you, Marvin. And now we acknowledge divine sovereignty. Can I ask Rabbi George, would you like to Micha Mocha for us this evening? You don't have to. I would love to hear you.
Well, okay. I have to I have to think of the melody first. מי כמוך בא אלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה. זה לי ענו ואמרו, זה לי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? Absolutely none could Rabbi George sing like that about, that we all feel in our soul. Adonai shall reign forever and ever, and that is the truth. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim, ופרוש עלינו סוכת שלומך ושמור צאתנו ובוננו, ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל Yerushalayim. Time for the Chatzi Kaddish. As you know, on Maariv Wednesdays, I like a big, rousing herd of cats Chatzi Kaddish. So if you want to unmute and go along with me, you're welcome to. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemecha ba bi'alma divrei kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chedechu beit Yisrael b'gala u'v'zman kariv v'meru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach Ya'alam u'al me'almaya Yitbarach Yishtabach Yitbar V'Tamar V'Tnaseh V'Tada V'Taleh V'Talal Shemeru Kudsha Yichu Le'elam U'Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Damiran B'Yama V'Yimeru Amen. Hey, I heard you, Ziona. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm having trouble with my new camera.
Oh,
Like every time I try to touch chat or
Well, I
mute or
can see you.
unmute, the camera goes nuts.
Oh,
I paid
okay.
$70 for that sucker and it's not working.
oy vavoy. Well, I'm sorry about that. How is your husband doing?
See, I'm talking and the camera goes out.
Oh, I see.
He had his vaccine Monday and he's doing well. But my mother has COVID,
Oh,
but she's doing okay.
Good. Is she vaccinated?
She's got all her vaccines.
Okay. We're seeing her a refuah shlema.
Thank you.
We begin now our Amidah. Ziona, would you like to start our Amidah for us with the Adonai Sefatai?
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah. Let me take myself off camera. Clearly this
Okay.
is not working. Just a second. Let me get to that page.
Would you, Ziona, you've never led the Amidah. Would you like to lead the whole Amidah for us tonight?
I don't know how far. Yeah, I can. I don't know how
Okay.
far I should go though, because every rabbi has
Everybody's a
different...
little different. If you just follow what I have on the slides, that's all we need to do today.
Okay. I'll do it. Can you do the Adonai Sifatatita and I'll do the
Absolutely.
rest? Because I've never really done that one line out loud.
Okay. Absolutely. Let the strength of this community and the strength of our ancestors give us the strength to search back to our path to the Holy Blessed One. Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah El Elyon Gomel Chasidim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Hasdei Avot V'Imahot Uvi Goal Livnei V'Nechem L'Ma'an Shemo Ba'ahava Melech Ozer Mashiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai Mechalye Hakol Atah Rav L'Choshia Mashiva Ruach U'Merid Hagashem Mechalhei Chaim B'Chesed Mechalhei Hakol Barachamim Rabim Samech Noflim V'Rofech Cholim Umatir Asurim Kayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha B'Gevurot Umido Melach Melech Mikmid Chayem Umatzmiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Atah L'Hachayot Hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol.
Everyone, let's stop the share for a second and give Ziona or that tree a really big hug. Thank you, Ziona, and that tree that's standing in for you.
You're
Tov
welcome.
Meod, Ziona.
Tov meod.
Thank you.
Now we continue with this. Now this is my favorite part of Rabbi Deborah's service, and I'm just stealing it. We give you thanks, Adonai, for everything in our lives, all these opportunities we have to breathe and smile and be present in our own journey, to recall our achievements, our lessons, the loved ones that give us love and we give love to, the kindnesses and good fortune in our lives. Everything about our lives is so wonderful. It's important to take a break for a moment and just acknowledge how special it is that we get to do even a little bit of what we're really meant to do here on this planet. And if you would like, please raise your hand if you'd like to say it, or you can write in the chat something that you are extremely grateful for today, something that made your day a little extra special. While I read the Modim Anachnu Lach. Modim Anachnu Lach, She'atahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu le'olam va'ed. We proclaim that you are the Adonai our God and the God of our ancestors throughout all time. You are the rock of our lives, the shield of our salvation in every generation. We thank you, we praise you for our lives, for our souls that are in your charge, for the miracles that are with us every day, and for the wonders and gifts that accompany us at all times. You are good, and your mercy is everlasting. You are compassionate, and your kindness never-ending. We have always placed our hope in you. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shmicha ulecha na'el lehodot. Praised are you, Adonai, the essence of goodness, to whom it is worthy to give praise. Let me look at the share here. Susan, oh, well, look at all these gratitudes. Ellen Friedman says, I am grateful to have a new job and to also be with all of you. Mazel tov, Ellen. Wow. B'chatzacha. That's wonderful. Congratulations on your new job. I'm grateful you're here as well. Ziona writes, I'm thankful for my mother's caregivers. I'm grateful for a productive workday. Same. I'm very productive for caregivers. All those people in the medical world who do all those things that keep it all together, but no one ever talks about, who do all the dirty work, the janitors, the caregivers. Thank you for all of them. Susan Bauer says, one of my cats who is semi-feral actually came up to me for pets and head scratches. She has come a long way. Wow, Susan. Thank you for sharing. Ask her if she wants to come to shul. Ellen Rose says, Mazel tov, Ellen. Yes. And Rabbi George says, it wasn't today, but it's still affecting me deeply today. I met a veteran yesterday who has had 5 tours in Baghdad and who was able to shake his hand and say thanks. Wow. That is a wonderful moment of gratitude when you meet someone who put their life on the line to protect you, who you never even met. 5 tours in Iraq. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Rabbi. Do we have any others before we move on? Okay, I will continue now with silent prayer where we can meditate on, I'm grateful for my Granny Franny. I'm grateful for all of the love in my life, especially from Granny. So now we take a moment for a silent prayer. Oh, say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Before we continue, I would like to get my little sermon thing up here. I had a very amazing week last week, and I wanted to share with you exactly what happened. So one of the things I was supposed to do last week was figure out how to connect Martin Luther King weekend with the opening of Shemot. And one of the things I read, and I thought, oh, well, Martin Luther King is kind of like Moses, right? So maybe God had to convince him. And how did that feel? How does it feel to be someone like Moses, someone like Martin Luther King, who Hashem has to visit over and over and give them the inspiration to believe that they are worth the spiritual mission for which they are intended? How does that actually feel? How does it feel to be in motion, in spiritual motion from a standstill? It's hard to say, but I can tell you this story from my own life. One of the first decisions I made when I got to high school was that I didn't want to take gym. I did not want to be pretending to be interested in sports or heterosexuality. So I found that anyone who enrolled in the dance department doesn't have to take gym. So I entered the beginning dance class as a freshman, and by the time I was a junior, I was the first male dancer ever accepted into the highest level dance class, advanced dance, at my high school, which meant that I got to be trained by guest choreographers, one of whom was Kimberly Valmore, a Black Christian woman who happened to be married to an Ashkenazi Jewish man. And one summer, Kimberly asked me to dance as a guest dancer for her dance company, the Coterie Dance Company in Oakland, California. And she choreographed a piece about the Mississippi burning lynchings, when 2 Jewish and 1 Black civil rights activists were lynched by a Southern police department in 1964 for trying to register people to vote. I was assigned the part of Andrew Goodman, one of the young Jewish boys who was murdered, and I danced to his own words, read over music, part of which involved me reimagining how he died. Flash forward to 2019, I'm 31 years old, a wandering Jew looking for a community where I fit in, and I find myself sitting in the congregation of the Third Baptist Church of San Francisco on Martin Luther King weekend, because it's part of an annual pulpit exchange between them and Temple Emmanuel of San Francisco, the largest Reform synagogue here. And as I was watching the service, a little 11-year-old Jewish girl got up at the altar and she sang the oldest words in the Torah, the Zimrat Yam, the Song of the Seas, the song that we sang as we were crossing out of slavery into freedom. And it's about, even though I don't know if anyone besides the Jews understood what that song was about, the entire audience was just hushed. And you could hear a pin drop, and you started seeing tears coming down people's eyes. And a lot of the Christians in the audience started shouting and praising her spontaneously. At the end of her song, her father got up and introduced himself as the nephew of Andrew Goodman, which meant his daughter, who I just listened to sing that song, was Andrew Goodman's great niece. Their family lives in San Francisco, and they happen to be congregants at Temple Emmanuel. So I got to speak to them after the service and tell them that I got to honor their uncle when I was a dancer in high school. And then, just last Friday, almost 4 years after that exchange to the exact date, I now have a job designing and co-leading an online Kabbalat Shabbat service under the banner of Jewish Universalism, which I didn't even know existed until 2020. And the Jewish and Christian calendars happen to match up this year such that I am charged with opening Shemot on Martin Luther King weekend. And I realize I have the opportunity yet again to honor and remember that young man who I never met, Andrew Goodman. In my research, I found a photograph of Martin Luther King himself holding up a picture of Andrew Goodman, which I am going to share with you right now. Here he is. Let me get back to my text here. I put it in my service, and I realized that instead of Martin Luther King, this time I'm the one saying his name. I'm the one on the pulpit, and dozens of people are live streaming my words as I'm speaking, and I'm a rabbi now. And 2 years ago, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And here I am for the third time in my life, meeting this moment of transcendence, this moment of, I need to take my shoes off because I see a burning bush. The same moment over and over. And in retrospect, it all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense that this is part of exactly what I'm meant to do. But I could not have seen that ahead of time. And each time I had that burning bush moment, I thought of myself as a closeted high school student trying to get away from gym, a wandering Jew not knowing where I'm going to go, and the youngest rabbi at Sim Shalom who's trying to do his very best not to mess up. And yet, despite all my insecurities, I can see now in retrospect that Andrew Goodman's spirit is living on in part through my interactions with his soul and with his legacy. And must have been how it felt for Moses to be moved. It's this overwhelming feeling of connectedness. And I wanted to say thank you to all of you for giving me this opportunity to be here, to be speaking to you, and to be being part of this community has given me what I just described to you. It's given me this amazing feeling of purpose and connectedness. And I feel all the love from you as I do that. I wanted to say thank you for that. That's all. So,
Can we give a hug to everybody?
Thank you. Yes.
yeah, everyone get a big
Yes.
hug.
You get the big hug, Rabbi. This is for you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you
You
so
are
much.
a really good rabbi, Yeah. You are a really good rabbi.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate that. Also, I mean, it doesn't even go on there. Like, we have members of our own congregation whose grandparents were in the neighborhood where the bombings happened on Dynamite Hill and where the church was bombed. We are very, very closely tied to the civil rights struggle in America, obviously for Jews, but it's really, you can't separate them. That's what Hashem is telling us. It's really,
And
it's one and the same.
may I add my own quick story?
Sure.
Okay. My grandmother and my aunts, whichever word you prefer, knew Martin Luther King Jr. My father was in the military at the time, so he never met him, unfortunately. But my grandmother had a grocery store in a Black neighborhood, and Martin Luther King Jr. came in there to meet. It was in Atlanta, I should say. It was in Atlanta, just outside Atlanta. He was walking around trying to meet all the business owners, and he assumed that it was a Black-owned business, and he met my grandmother. And then when he was in prison or in jail in Atlanta, he had the food brought in from my grandmother's store.
Wow.
And he would stop in every time he was in, in the area. So, yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm glad, there's all of these coincidences that of course aren't coincidences.
I mean, and he cared about every minority, as you just pointed out, and that just reinforces it, because he came in and he found a Jewish lady, a little old Jewish lady instead of well, she probably wasn't that old, but a little Jewish lady instead of a Black family or a Black person, and it didn't matter to him. She was a minority and she was struggling and she was serving a community and doing the best she could, and that was enough for him. And there goes my camera again.
I think we have a lot of stories of our grandparents and our parents who met moments of their American experience where they suddenly felt very different than the way they had felt for a long time prior to that, where they, you get to know your Jewishness through the American experience in moments like that. It's really, thank you for sharing that, Siona. Does anyone else want to share anything else before we move on?
Yeah, I would like to say, especially in this time in 2023, it's come to the point where every group feels like it's its own group, whether it's in the Jewish group, where you have the whole gamut from the very Orthodox to the secular, where you have any Christian group and all their into their separate groups. You have Asian groups within that. There are many groups. Whatever group you're talking about, and I think we have come to the point where each group is its own group.
Well, that's what leadership is for, Ellen.
But we have to come to be able to say, to compromise, and to be able to work together.
You're making me think of a moment where I saw Rabbi George do exactly that. Rabbi George talked about the food, the Creole food of Louisiana, where he lives, where he's from. And that's basically the same thing. You are elevating the lived experience of the people from Louisiana having to eat, table scraps and all this stuff from all these years and this amazing, amazing, delicious, diverse cuisine that came out of it. And now you have a rabbi talking about it to a group of other rabbis. So, thank you, Rabbi George, for diversifying our Jewish world just by being in yours. So, anyone else have anything they want to share before we move on?
In Tanzania, they had this Maasai by the side of the road. They were giving us food, fish heads, and even at the breakfast in the nice hotel, we would have large fish heads fried for breakfast. I guess all this kosher is like you don't share the food with somebody does not like you, and would prevent for the people to make love and make families. So you make kosher food because you're going to eat only with the one like you, and then you're going to prevent eating with an Indian girl or a black girl, and then you're not going to have a mixed family, and you get to conserve a Jewish family. Maybe that is all about the kosher food.
I think what you're saying is one of the things that I was most struck by when I was in rabbinical school is to what extent did the Jewish identity that developed in the diaspora as a response to the threats to our identities in the countries where we're living, we developed ways to keep ourselves separated, to survive. To what extent? Food. By food, exactly. We literally can't eat with other people up until very recently. So to what extent do rules that separate us still serve us? Do they identify us in some ways? Yes. But in some ways, you're right. We really do miss out on, I'm not sure. Is there even such thing as a kosher Creole restaurant? I don't know, but
there is. It's called the Kosher Cajun, and it's in New Orleans.
Well, I got my travel list now for New Orleans. Thank you, Rabbi.
In New York for Christmas, what do we do for Christmas in New York? You ask everybody in New York, they will say, we go to the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, of course.
And then at the Chinese restaurant, what do you get? You get pork ribs, you get that. And we don't call them pork ribs. We call them, that's the unidentified meat. Unidentified.
That's funny.
I've heard of that.
Oh, because they eat a lot of pork. I know.
Look, the kosher thing is, if it works for you, it works for you.
Right. I think you have to also give that group their respect.
Exactly.
Exactly. I hero you, but I do think that group does have to have its respect. And in many ways, they have found ways. If you look at kosher cookbooks from a long time ago, as of today, I get for Pesach, from, it's a very Orthodox group. And and I cannot believe the difference in their recipes. They're all kosher, but they are up to date on everything, which they didn't have 30, 40 years ago. So in their own way, they kept up, but they were able to keep their way of doing things.
I love living in kosher. I've stayed in many kosher homes. When I was in Israel, I would stay over for Shabbat weekends in Orthodox communities where it was strictly kosher in every way. And there is a magic to it. It really is beautiful. When you live that lifestyle in a community of other Jews living that lifestyle, it's undeniably magic. For me, it doesn't work, mainly because I don't eat dairy because I'm allergic to it. And I don't eat meat because I don't like it. I'm a vegan. So, I consider myself kosher because you couldn't possibly have unethical vegan food unless you're making plastic, I guess. But,
my experience as a young vegetarian, I was not yet vegan, in a kosher home was horrible. But that was once. I mean, I don't know. They made cholent.
Oh no.
And the father of the household could not understand why I couldn't just pick out the meat and eat everything else. And I said, would you consider it a dairy meal or a parv meal or a meat meal? And of course, the answer was it would still be a meat meal, even if there was no meat in it. And I'm like, okay, then it's not acceptable. But then he was like, I don't know why you don't eat meat. And it was an awful experience, but it was one experience. So I don't know how other Orthodox Jews treat people like me and you, vegans.
Oh, yeah. You know, there's a lot of words for what they think of people like you and me, but not all of them, first of all. And, you know, there's a lot of openness out there. And food is one of those very, very sensitive things. It gets down to the soul of people, you know, in ways that are deeply personal. So I try not to tell people that I'm vegan, because I notice that people tend to think that I'm judging them or whatever. I try to just keep it to myself.
I went through that stage, and now I'm old and I don't care.
In
And
France,
I don't really mean that I'm literally old. I just mean I'm older and I don't care.
Wow.
I
Not
like being vegan, but I also like having friends. So
um,
That strict, I probably wouldn't never get to see any of my family members. But with that, there are some things that are considered kosher. I probably would have a problem eating because there's so much sodium or salt in them. I mean, I won't eat the what is it, not the sardines, but the
herring.
yeah, it's a little bit too much salt in it. And I have to be careful because I have a heart condition. But I find, you know, if I go to a family's house, I can find something I can eat. I'll eat a salad. I eat a lot of salads, you know, but it's like
That's exactly what I do, because I do observe kashrut, and most of my family does not. And I had to make that decision. Do I want to walk away from everybody? So I had to make my way of saying, okay, I'm going to eat in your house, but I can only eat certain things. And they know it.
Yeah.
Sephora writes in the chat that she is vegan and her family descends from the South, so she is the only vegan in her family. I'm sorry. That sounds difficult.
Well,
That sounds very hard.
we can.
But it's a good thing. You know, you have to be able to treat your body well. And whatever that means to you, you just have to do it.
But
So,
veganism has become very more popular. So you don't, it's not as odd as it was even 10 years ago.
right.
It's much more acceptable now.
So
absolutely.
let me start the share.
When I first
Sorry.
became vegetarian, we had to buy everything through the mail.
No.
Wow.
Like take an order form, write it out.
That's amazing.
So it's a lot easier to be vegan now than it was.
So let's continue with our service, and we can talk a little bit at the end as well. The Kaddish Shalom. Yikara v'yikra shemei rabba, b'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich machuteh b'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayedech chol Beit Yisrael, b'angalav b'zman kariv v'imaru. Amen. Yesh me'rabba mevorach ha'olam u'me'ol Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramon v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudsha b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran v'yalma v'imaru. Amen. Yesh lama rabba min shamai v'chaim aleinu v'chol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Osei shalom b'imamav v'yasei shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשי, שלא עשנו כתויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורל עלינו וכל המנה, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר וחיה אדוני למלך הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Thank you, Ellen. That was fun. So now it's time for the Misha Berach, where we remember all of those who need our healing, who need healing energy of body, of mind, of soul, in any kind of way. I'm going to go around the Zoom, and everyone can say the names of those that they would like to send healing energy to if you prefer, or you can write it in the chat, and then we will say the Misha Berach together. Starting with whose mic is on. Dana, who are you thinking of?
I thinking of Mark and Tom and Paul and Sinan.
We're sending all of them energy of lots of healing. Thank you, Dana. Marvin Gruber.
Dawn Alnott, Nelson Respaldo, Karen Quinn.
Sending lots of love and healing energy to them. Susan Bowers.
Dorothy, Marlene, Jean, Sue, that's me, John, and all those harmed during the shooting at the Martin Luther King Jr. Day event. I understand one died. We'll get them later.
Thank you, Susan. We send all of our healing energy to them. Ziona.
Chavabat Elsa, Representative Jamie Raskin, who has cancer, and all survivors of violence and other disasters, the helicopter crash in Ukraine and all other disasters.
Thank you, Ziona. Sephora.
My friend David, who has bladder cancer, who suffer PTSD, myself, because I'm feeling pretty sick. And who else? Oh, and your grandma Franny.
Thank you. Thank you,
So
Sephora.
Sephora.
Thank you.
Sephora. Ellen Rose.
Thank you. All those who are suffering physically and emotionally around the world. All those Sim Shalomers who are in need of Refuah Shlema. Aaron Ben Ellen, Ginny Batwana, Jenny Bat Nina, Alexandra Bat Aurora. The people who were killed today in the Ukrainian crash. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And Ellen Friedman.
Jen Smith. That's it.
Thank you. Sending her energy. We're also
Thank
sending
you.
energy. Rabbi George is sending energy, healing energy to Liz Baker, Claudia and Curtis, Yoko Rush and Joey Frazier. I would like to send some healing energy to my granny Franny, to all my Sim Shalomers who need refuah shlema of any kind, my cousin Willow, and all of the people in this city I'm in who have no home tonight. I send my refuah shlema energy to all of them. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Yivarechet HaCholim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimlei Rachamim Aleihem Lahamlachim Lachamachamam Uleraportam Lach Chazikam v'Yishlach Lehem Mimhara Refuah Shlema Min Hashamayim Refuah Et HaNefesh Urefuah Haguf Hashta Ba'agala V'Zman Kariv V'nomar, Amen. Sending all of that love and that healing energy out to the whole world. May we all be one with our purpose. Now it's time to remember those who are no longer with us physically, but always with us spiritually. If you are in Yahrzeit, or if you are mourning or remembering someone who has visited you recently, I invite you to unmute and say their names. You can do so just spontaneously if you like.
All those who have nobody to say Kaddish for them. Sally Bat Ida. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember them.
Francis Johnson.
Remember them. Thank you.
Those lost to recent violence and COVID.
Thank you, Ziona. Dana?
Estela Gas, Manus Gas, and Paul Vieru.
Thank you, Dana. Ellen Friedman?
Timothy Paul Taylor and Laura Frick. Thank you.
Marvin Gruber?
Francis Johnson.
Thank you. Rabbi George.
In recent days, David Goldman.
I'm sorry for your loss. Is there any other names to be remembered this evening? Okay, we continue now. The Mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yurteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yumechon v'chayeh dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulmei ulmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'ama v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav. Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. Let the sovereign of our ancestors and of every child that has ever been born allow the healing regeneration of creation itself to infuse our lives with purpose, to heal the sick, and to give meaning to those who have passed on in our lives today. May we remember that we are all part of the greater one. We all stand together at Sinai together. We have never been apart except physically. And may we remember that our community, the Jewish community, is as big as any could possibly be, and you are very, very loved. Erev Tov, everybody.
Erev Tov, Rabbi, Toda Rabbah.
I want to thank Rabbi George for coming, because I really cherish every moment I get to hear you sing, Rabbi. It really is a huge part of why I love, Sim Shalom and the people that come and bring their talents and just really convey that feeling in their own way. You're extraordinary at it. So thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And in case anyone, I don't know if everyone was here, but Rabbi Deborah on Monday gave a beautiful Maariv on Martin Luther King. And her brother, who is a minister and labor union activist, came and gave a speech more about Martin Luther King than is normally remembered. So if you haven't, I'm sorry?
Actually, her brother, her biological brother.
Yes. Rabbi Mackenzie's older brother. And both of her sisters, two of her sisters were there. It was a big Rabbi Mackenzie love fest. So if you'd like, go check it out. It was a wonderful service.
He's not Jewish anymore, I guess, or
I don't know. I don't know the story, but it was a beautiful service.
Yes,
So,
it was.
And one
It
of the
really
things,
was.
well, the thing I forgot to say in my Devar, because I wrote it really quick right before this, is that one of the things about this community, Sim Shalom, is we have a lot of Jews by choice. And I've noticed in all Jewish communities I've ever been in, there's always like a subtle feeling of I'm not Jewish enough, or ooh, this person's performing how well they know Torah, or it makes you feel like, do I really belong here? I did not know if I ever belonged where I was in each of those moments I was talking about. And when I found out last week that it was all part of who I am as a Jew, as a human being, it makes perfect sense in retrospect. So there is not, and also I want to remind everyone that I am the son of a Jew by choice. My mother was a converted Jew, and she produced a rabbi who is choosing to make his ministry, to make this world, Sim Shalom, about accepting everyone for exactly who they are, and exactly the way they love, exactly the way they found their Jewish identity. That's very, very important to understand, that there is no one who's more Jewish than anyone else here. This is not that kind of place. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. It was a very big feeling yesterday, that last week, to realize the connectedness of it all. So
Well,
anyway.
I have to share, I never had the privilege of meeting Martin Luther King, but I had the privilege of meeting Charlie Smith. And if you don't know about him, there's kind of a controversy about his actual age, but I know Life magazine once did an entire magazine just on him. he was estimated to be maybe 136 years old. Now that is controversial, but he remembers coming over on a slave ship. He grew up, and he was one of those who was able to get educated. He stayed in people's homes, but he actually lived in Bartow, Florida for many years, long after the freedom, but he had a little store. But in his older days, he spent time in the Bartow nursing home. And my dear friend, I had a friend who was an Episcopal priest, and his wife happened to be one of the nurses at that place. So he was somebody that, I mean, if you think about it, he was alive when Abraham Lincoln was alive. And I mean, he went through, and he's one of those people, when you sat down to listen to him, he had some stories to tell, and and you had to make sure you had a lot of time, because boy, he would tell you stories. And I think he grew up through the horse and buggy, and then seeing cars and seeing planes. They even took him to NASA one time to see one of the launches. I think it was one of the first moon launches. And of course, it was just a little bit beyond him. He just kept saying, no one is going to the moon. No one's going to the moon. But that was just that just went right over his head. But he was quite feisty. I mean, one time a reporter went to do a story on him, and she gave him a little peck on the cheek, and he goes, "One more like that, little girl, you're going to get my coals a burning." And everybody just cracks up. But he was a character. But I always remember him. I cherished that time that I had a chance to just sit and just listen. And I do know somebody that they did their dissertation, they did their doctoral, talk about people being on a budget. She wanted to do she went and found different people who were either family members of people who had been enslaved, or some elderly who had actually been slaves. She took a tape recorder and actually set it down and let them tell the story. And that's how she collected all of these stories. Where they are, I'm not sure. I would love to find them. But that was her project. So saving this history is it's amazing.
So important. So similar to what Steven Spielberg did with the Shoah Foundation.
Absolutely.
So important, because otherwise they're going to say it never happened.
Absolutely.
So that's the Lord's work for sure. Hi, Dana. You want to say something?
I just watched a movie called Lansky, and I tell you, it's quite amazing to see the story of this mensch called Lansky and how he influenced the history of Israel. If you want to enter to watch it on my Amazon account.
Wait, this is being recorded. This is being recorded. Don't say it out loud.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay.
But this story of Lansky gave me such a joy to see, and sorrow for this chap who was a nice Jewish boy who always kept a kosher home and had a very nice Jewish life, and he was an accountant. And he gave to Israel in 1948, and then later Nixon traded him for guns for the war with Egypt. And I was loving Nixon for that so much that he gave gun to Israel at that time, but actually he traded Lansky. So that's something to see, these movies
I would love
from
to.
2021.
Thank you for the recommendation. That sounds great. Rabbi George, did you have your hand up? Or I saw another hand somewhere. No? Okay. Well, thank you for that, Dana. And thank you for everyone who participated this evening. This was a really lovely service. I want to thank visiting Rabbi George. Rabbi George has a beautiful service at, what's your temple name in Lake George?
Temple Sinai, Lake Charles.
Temple Sinai in Lake Charles. I've seen some of your recordings. I saw your recording from the first lockdown in March of 2020 when you
Oh, wow.
and you handled that beautifully.
Well, we have new equipment and we're trying this Friday night. We're launching it again, in person and streaming at the same time. Our last two attempts didn't work, but this one we think we've got the kinks worked out, and so we're gonna give it another shot.
good luck. I hope with all of God's love, Bezrat Hashem. it'll work
I'm
out.
laning Torah that night, so
Oh, great.
I hope it all works.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov to you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Good night. Be
Good
well.
night,
Tomorrow is
Shavua tov.
Rabbi Galit's Maariv, and then on Friday we have Shabbat services at 3:30.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Erev Tov.
All right, everyone.
Tov.
Bye. Bye, Sephora. Bye, Marvin. Bye, Ellen and Susan and Ziona and Dana
Bye.
and Rabbi George.